Oh, you're thinking of Shadowlife. That was
Oh,
a good.
Shadow, am I saying Shadowlife? Yeah, Shadow. Okay, you're right. Yeah,
No, no.
that.
Dysfunctional was great.
Yes,
Uh,
you're right. That was I thinking of Shadowlife. It just seemed different. It didn't feel like it was.
because I had nothing to do with that record. Nothing. I did Dysfunctional. We had no record deal. I wrote that whole album by myself with Jeff and Mick. I did what I wanted. I had built my own recording studio, and we did Dysfunctional. It took about a year, and I was really proud of that record. And it sold 400,000. Then George came back in the band like the last week of that record. He played one solo on Two Out of Fly. He had nothing to do with Dysfunctional. It sold 450,000 copies.
I mean, The Maze. There's some really great songs. Hole in My Head. I mean, some really great songs on the album. Look at the
Yeah, I mean,
titles backwards.
lyrics, I just write the music. Hold my head, puppets on a string. But it wasn't the classic Dokken sound because I didn't do the music. I didn't write the guitar parts. And then three of them decided, George was into Monster Magnet and he was into all these weird bands. And I'm like, dark. And that's why Shadowlife was, when they sent me the music, I was like, okay, Don, we're going to write the music. You just write the lyrics. And I went, to what? These songs are not Dokken. They're not melodic. They're not catchy. They're just weird, I thought. And that's why that album sold 50,000 copies, and then George left again. So I had nothing to do with Shadowlight. Here's a trivia thing. If you look at every Dokken album we've done, 13, you see the Dokken logo. On
Right.
Shadowlight, no Dokken logo. I refuse to put my logo on it. It's just handwritten Dokken. I own the
Huh.
logo artwork. I said, no, I ain't putting I'm not putting my name on this record. I was very disappointed with that record. It was just terrible. I mean, some good songs, but
How
it
come you
was,
did it then? How come you didn't say like I'm writing the music?
huh?
How come you didn't push back a little bit to write the music too, instead of just singing on it?
I tried. I just, because it's just too much to get into. I'd have to write a book. I mean,
Yeah,
he
yeah, okay.
says we have to go to Arizona. That's where he was living. And we have to record at this studio. And we go in the studio and it's got like drywall dust all over the floor. I'm coughing up shit. They were remodeling. Shit didn't work. The console kept breaking down. And I'm like, what are we doing here? It's just a crap studio. But George wouldn't come to LA. So we all had to go, and Mick lived in, and I said, look at this studio. I remember I walked in the refrigerator and the freezer was jam packed full of food that had been there for years, like rotten food. And I'm like, I want to get the hell out of here. So it was a very bad environment. And the producer, I remember the first day I met him, it was Kelly Gray. He ended up playing with Queensryche for a while. He'd had one hit record, Max Box, or Candlebox. And we had a meeting a month before with Bob Rock and Bruce Fairbairn, the two big boys that did Metallica.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and they come to our hotel. I'm like, well, man, we got Bob Rock and Bruce Fairbairn. And they go, yeah, we're going to record in Canada and we want to produce your album. And I'm like, oh man, this is going to be amazing with all this musical input
Yeah.
and the band, you know. And I went, you're joking, right? Bob Rock, Bruce Fairbairn, who sell tens of millions of records. You don't want to use them as a producers? And I was really upset. And they go, we want Kelly Gray. And I'm like, who's Kelly Gray? Well, he did Candlebox. I'm like, okay, it was a good record, but that's one as opposed to their 20. And being that the band was four ways, they shot me down.
Yeah.
So I just went into a depression. So Kelly
Okay.
Gray in, and the first thing when I met him, he said, I just want to say, I don't like your voice.
What?
Hand to God. The producer, he goes, I don't like your voice. I went, you don't like my voice? He goes, yeah, all that whiny vibrato and yeah. I don't want you doing any of that stuff in this record. I just want you singing straight notes. And George is like, yes, finally, we can get Don to stop doing that vibrato thing. And I was like, oh, we're off to a good start. So that was it, just the day one. And of course, anybody looks at the old magazines, George was on steroids. I mean, he looked like Tarzan. He had
He was huge. He was huge.
huge biceps. He was all buffed, and he'd come in like in a little bikini thing with a number on it. He was doing muscle men comps tests, and I'm like, whatever. He's all oiled up and shaved, and he's sitting on the couch, and there's oil over the couch, and I'm like, brain, and I'm in, and he was just ripped. But he was doing massive amount of steroids, and anybody knows you do it.
Yeah,
You
your
do it.
mind.
So it's like every week, him and I are always in a fist fight because he's just, jacked up on steroids. And I'm like, oh boy, this is, we're like almost fist fighting every couple of days. So very bad vibes. The producer tells me he hates my voice. I'm like, well, you're the wrong guy. So, but they liked him because he did drugs. So they were like a family, and I come
Yeah.
in and they'd have a newspaper on the little end of the table covered up, and I'd lift up the newspaper and there's a big pile of cocaine, and I'm like, oh, great. So I'm thinking, like, you think I don't know? You guys are like running noses, and
Well,
it was a very bad record and a very bad energy, as opposed to the only thing good about Dokken was, for some reason, when we went on stage, we all pulled it together. The Aerosmith tour is probably the heyday of the best we were playing. There's a video on YouTube of us playing in Philadelphia, Aerosmith, and we're kicking ass, just kicking ass. I was singing great. Everybody played great. For some reason, no matter all the problems, when we hit that stage, we'd come together and be the best we could. But then it wasn't. It was
right.
nobody cared. It was just everybody was just out of their minds, and it was depressing. That's why the band broke up. I couldn't take it anymore.
I don't blame you. I think, and a band's a small business too. I mean, people forget that too. I mean, you're with them all day long, and finances and emotions and everything else. It's a lot to be. You're so invested into everything that person, everything they do affects you. So if you're
Yep.
not part of it,
And I
it's
thought it was fair. I got the record deal. It was my name. I'd been around for 6 years before they joined the band. And I thought, I'm going to make this simple. 4-way split. I make $1, you make $1, you make it up. That was my deal in Dokken for the whole. So basically, I gave up 75% of my publishing, my royalties,
and it should
millions.
have worked. And it should have worked for the band. Should have been happy because a band, because that's what all bands want. The drummer wants. They all want a part of it. So
Right.
just the motivation's there. So the fact it didn't is really sad. The money you lost because it didn't even work out that way.
Mick Brown was a lucky guy. All Mick had to do was rehearse the songs, come in the studio for 5 days, cut the drum tracks, and he was off for the rainbow. And he got 25% of our $1 million advances, 25% of our $1 million publishing. I mean, Mick scored. All he had to do was play drums for a couple of weeks, and he was, see you later, see you on tour. But that was the deal I made, and breaking the chains. And so, I paid the price, I mean, but it could have been the other way around. George
Mhm.
could have wrote all the hits. Jeff could have wrote all the hits. I don't know. It didn't. It just happened to be that I wrote most of the hits, musically and lyrically. I think they thought we were a Van Halen. Eddie wrote the music, David wrote lyrics, but that wasn't the way it was. Because I'm a guitar player. I wrote
I didn't
every.
realize how much you wrote even in the early days, and even being a fan of the band. I didn't realize because the information wasn't always out there the same as it is nowadays. Or
Missing, you know, and everybody was interpretive, but they thought I'm the singer, George is the guitar hero. No, I wrote In My Dreams, the whole song. George had nothing to do with it. Alone Again, Lucky. I can name a dozen hits we had, but when you see the album, it's say, Don Dokken, George Lynch, Jeff Pilson, Mick Brown. I was just trying to do that to keep the peace. And then finally under Lock and Key, which was a joke, I wrote like 8 out of 10 songs, all of it. And they're like, we don't want to say Don Dokken, Don Dokken, Don Dokken, Don Dokken. So if you look at the credits under Lock and Key, it says all songs written by Dokken. That's it. There was no Jeff, Mick. They didn't do that. And I think it says, and Dokken is blah, 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 blah. Because they couldn't stand the fact that my name would be on there on 8 out of 10.
yeah.
And I'm like, it doesn't matter, guys. It's a 4-way split. I can name 10 bands that I won't, that the singer takes the lion's share of the money, the publishing, the royalties, the keyboard player gets nothing, the drummer gets 10%. But we didn't do that. I know many bands that the lead singer takes the lion's share, but I didn't do that, so when I left the band, all the bad press about Don's greedy and he got these $2 billion deal on Geffen. He just wants the money. And I was like, I know what you guys are talking about. It's a 4-way split, So, but when you're on drugs, you see the world differently. So that's why I
But
left.
the